Hi guys, welcome back. Join me today as I attend an investor conference at the Grand Hyatt Manila. In case you didn't know, the Grand Hyatt Manila, located in Bonifacio Global City Taguig, stands 281.78 meters and is the tallest building in the Philippines since its completion in 2017. At a cost of $300 million, this building is part of Federal Land's Grand Central Park mixed-use complex. It has 66 floors and 461 guest rooms, with 3 major restaurants opened already, namely the Grand Kitchen, Number 8 China House, and the Peak. Grand Hyatts are very dynamic hotels. They are event-driven hotels specializing in meeting, incentives, conventions, and events. The theme for the conference at the Grand Hyatt Ballroom is Investment Opportunities in the Technology Sector, hosted by Fidelity Investments and Citibank.
Welcome to this afternoon's event entitled Investment Opportunities in the Technology Sector. And I'd like to welcome all of you to the Grand Ballroom of the Grand Hyatt Hotel. Before we start, I'd like to share some insights from my recent trip abroad. Last week I was in Australia, and I'd like to share with you some of the interesting things I found out when I was there that relates to technology in our everyday life. This is the McDonald's store at the Sydney International Airport, where you are given the spectacle of the combination of old technology and new technology. To order, you need to approach either a crew member or assist yourself to go to the LCD panel and order for yourself, and then insert or tap your credit card. When you punch in your order, the order gets transmitted to the kitchen upstairs, the yellow glass assembly plant for your McDonald's meal, where the crew would assemble your meal, whether it's a quarter pounder with cheese or it's chicken nuggets or whatever, and then delivered to you via a conveyor belt, if you can see it there, all the way to the ground floor. So it's a marriage of old and new technology. And these things we don't notice every day, but it has actually made our lives very efficient. And for that, we have to thank technology. The other interesting thing that I found out when I was in, this was at the Sydney International Airport. And this one I took a picture of when I was in Brisbane at the MacArthur Center. Is this a Bitcoin ATM? So what does a Bitcoin ATM do? Do you actually get to withdraw Bitcoins out of the ATM? Or do you actually allow you to buy cryptocurrency from the cash that you have? So later on, we'll ask our guest if investing in technology strategies actually involve investing in emerging technologies like cryptocurrencies. I'm sure everyone would be very interested to find out. Now, progress is brought about by technology, and the way a civilization develops is dependent on the technology that it will develop through the ages. And that is where the focus of this afternoon's discussion is all about. We'll discuss where we can find opportunities to invest in technology and where these opportunities are, because technology is a broad sector. Which particular subsectors of technology are interesting for us to invest in? Before I continue, I'd like to show this very good video from our partner, Fidelity. As all of you know, this event has been brought to you by CFSI in collaboration with Inter Asset Management and our partners also, Fidelity International. Please watch the video.
I've been working at Fidelity International almost as long as I've been playing. My first job was for a Japanese bank, but I wanted a more international view of investing, so I joined Fidelity. As head of Fidelity in Asia, I spend most of my time traveling to meet with clients around the region to ensure we're meeting their investment needs. The home is Hong Kong. I was born here, and this is where my family lives.
Solutions design team out of London. We work very closely with our clients in different countries to understand their individual challenges. For example, to help ensure a pension plan can meet its needs. Sometimes we tailor existing solutions to match those needs, but more often we innovate.
Meeting as many clients as I do, I know they value the long-term partnerships we can build as a privately owned company. A good example of this is China. We have patiently worked to become the first wholly foreign-owned asset manager to launch onshore product in mainland China. Given our private ownership, we are able to take a long-term approach to develop the best solutions for our clients. Fidelity has had a research outpost in Tokyo since 1969. It's thanks to our research that we are able to determine companies' chances of success or failure over time. Our analysts meet with company directors, competitors, customers, and suppliers to understand the forces shaping the market fully. Their insights are shared across a single global research platform. Often, an insight into one sector or region of the world completes the picture for another. So it's all about joining the dots.
Solving mathematical problems is one of my hobbies. Founding answers is not just a job for me, it's a passion. And there's nothing more rewarding than when you know you're helping to secure other people's futures.
I'd like to welcome our guest for this evening. Mr. Lim Pan-Ki, or PQ, is the Associate Director of Intermediary Sales for Southeast Asia for Fidelity International. Based in Singapore, PQ is responsible for growing the intermediary distribution businesses with key consumer banks in Singapore and also carry out new business propositions in the rest of the Southeast Asia region. PQ joined Fidelity in January of 2012 and has over 10 years experience in working in the asset management and banking industry. Prior to Fidelity, PQ worked at Standard Chartered Bank, where he was a regional fund analyst performing mutual funds due diligence and research for the wealth management and private banking businesses. Welcome, PQ. Welcome back. Welcome back to Manila. Okay, let's start. But before we start, I think we lack one microphone. Okay, Veronica.
Yes, boss.
Please send the microphone.
So on its way to you, boss.
Thank you very much, Veronica. So, PQ, is your mic. Let me make sure first it's not going to spin again. You taped it very well, Veronica. Yeah, please tape it. Okay, so are you going to take it away, Veronica?
You're welcome, boss.
One entrance. Oh, okay. So Jarvis will take it away. All right. Okay, PQ. I hope don't try this at home, kids. Okay, good afternoon, PQ. Thank you for being with us here again in Manila. And tonight we're going to talk about a lot about technology and a lot of insights, a lot of questions I'm sure the audience would have regarding investing in technology, given that it's an emerging theme across the financial markets. Okay, let me start with my first question. And let's get to the basics first. What is technology? Let's start with that, and then we'll see how the rest of the evening goes.
Sure, and a very good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for welcoming me back here again. Actually, Mon, that's arguably the toughest question to answer for the night, because it's so wide-ranging. So many things associated with technology that it's impossible to sort of put a one-liner definition to it. So what I'm going to do is to show you what technology is in two parts, right? There is a daily life aspect of what technology is, and then there's also a bit of an investment angle to what technology is as well. So let's attempt to answer this in two parts, right? So you will see on the slide behind me that what I've done is to put technology, okay, into what I call a day in my life. So this is my daily my daily flow, right?
That's a lot of technology. I mean, even lunch has technology.
It's a lot, but let's take a look at a rundown to see how this all makes sense, right? So when I wake up in the morning, right, I've got this device, right, called the Amazon Alexa. Some of you might know it, some of you might not, right? For those of you who don't know, it's kind of similar to Siri that you have on your iPhone, right, where it takes in instructions. It's basically a smart receiver and coordinator of appliances and systems that you can program in your household. Right? So when I wake up, I say, boil the water, right? And the kettle gets to work, right? Because they know how to make some coffee and stuff like that, right? So that happens the first thing when I wake up in the morning. And then of course I ask Alexa to read out the grocery list. So that's for the benefit of my wife, who always loses the shopping list. So we no longer go by the paper on the fridge system. It goes by this one where there's no more excuses for forgetting to buy shampoo.
Yes.
Right. And then I grab to work. Right. This I guess a lot of you are very familiar with as well. And in the gym, I use the Fitbit. I no longer use the Fitbit. I use the iWatch. There's a bit of a separate story about the iWatch, but more on that later, right? At work, right, we've got a computer. Of course, that seems in this list like the most old school technology of everything, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to get around using computers, so that's still very much in my daily life, daily lifestyle. Salesforce. Now, I'll speak a bit about this because I represent the sales team in Southeast Asia, and Salesforce is very, very important for me because what it does is it's a system, it's a software, right, where I program, and I input things and factors into it. So, for instance, I'm here tonight, right? In tandem with Citibank, in tandem with ATR Asset Management, in front of 100 or so clients, and the topic is technology. So I put all these things into the system, including the feedback that you are about to give later on. And what it does is it puts tonight's event in a grand scheme of a lot of other events that the whole company does, what I do as well. So it's compared with banks in Singapore, compared with a lot of stuff. And the purpose of that is so that it returns me with some things to think about. So for instance, what do the clients in the Philippines like to hear about? Do they like this talk show format? Right? So that's to ensure that all our events, all our content, all our slides continue improving every time I'm here. Right? So that's what Salesforce does for me. Of course, there's other measurement metrics which I won't. Now, if you read this screen from right to left, you will realize that there is not one sector that can do without the other. Okay, so we start off by looking at the most basic thing, right? Semiconductors. What are these things? In short, right, without going into the technology part of it, right, this technology goes into chips and parts of the mobile phone or any appliance for that matter.
So essentially the building block of everything that enables us to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a basic building block, a basic core of the particular product that you're buying. So you're using a smartphone, you're using an iWatch, right? All these things, right, are basically formed via a core, which is semiconductor based, right? And then you've got the hardware, because after that you produce nice and interesting devices, right? It's there. And with devices, you need the software to make them useful. So in short, that's a short value chain that we look at from an investment perspective, from a subsector perspective.
So from before, where investing in technology would mean buying the latest 80-inch 4K UHD TV, now investing in technology would mean actually looking at these manufacturers, these companies, and actually sharing their growth. The next slide, I think, gives us more, well, of course the text is a little bit small, but if you can give us more color on these subsectors and even potentially more subsectors within these technology sectors.
Sure. I'd just like to make a little correction on to what you mentioned just now. So the investment that you mentioned about the 40-inch TV or the new screen or whatsoever, I wouldn't classify that as an investment. Okay, that's more of a consumption, a consumer of that technology, right?
Yes.
And that's the reason why investing in technology works, because people buy it, right? And this screen, sorry for the small font, but I just wanted to show in a more text-friendly manner in terms of what these three sectors really mean. But let me point out a few companies. So from the software and services perspective, you've got companies like Google, Facebook, eBay, PayPal, even game developers like Electronic Arts, right? And as the name of the subsector suggests, software and services, they are really things that are not so tangible, right? As in you can't really touch and feel them, right? But they serve to make your hardware, okay, a lot more useful and a lot more efficient than it should be. Right? So that's software and services. You've got the second sector, which is technology, hardware, and equipment. Well, look no further than your tables. You've got your iPhones, you've got your Samsung devices, your iPads, if you bought some. These are all hardware and equipment. And it also goes into things like hard disks, security systems, so on and so forth. Okay? And last but not least, your chip makers, right? Your semiconductors and equipment. That's where Intel, Qualcomm, one of the biggest producers of semiconductor technology and equipment, is in this bucket as well. So hopefully at this point in time, you take away the fact that technology, from a broad user perspective, is ingrained in our lives. And secondly, these are the ways that we sort of look at technology from an investment perspective.
Thank you very much, PQ. My third question is, given what you've said about the three technology sectors, what are the new opportunities in the new and emerging technologies, and would now still be a good time to invest in these technologies, given that the appreciation of these companies have been going on for several quarters already? So are these valuations too high?
That's a very good question, and actually, arguably the most important question of tonight, because you come here and you listen to a tech talk, right? And you might wonder, why should you be investing today, right? So I think a very important way to start is, on my next slide, where we look at 3 reasons why we want to invest in technology right now. So yes, one very good point that we've read the papers. For those of you who follow, technology has been a very, very well-performing sector. Okay? Now, first and foremost, is it justified? I think the answer is yes. We'll break down some numbers for you later on, right? But the reason why we hear so much about the likes of Netflix, likes of Amazon, and so on and so forth, there are perfectly legitimate reasons why they've been driven up so high in the market. But never mind that. If you are, an investor that is very intent on finding good value in technology, then maybe what we term as FANG stocks, F-A-N-G, right? FANG stands for Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. These are the big boys that you see on the papers every day. So maybe then FANG stocks are arguably not for you. Right? To be very honest, we've also in Fidelity taken off some profit of these names because they've done so well for us last year coming into this year. That brings me to my first point actually. If we look at technology as a sector, right, across the board, we'll find that actually valuations are still quite reasonable. If you take away the valuations of these high-profile FANG stocks, FANG-type stocks, right, you will see that actually there's a lot of juice left in the sector itself. More on that later on. Let's go to the extreme left, right, where you see the first block says new technologies present.
It says the Industrial Revolution. Are you going to take us through the history of the Industrial Revolution?
Not quite. Actually, the Industrial Revolution is there, but the key thing is really 4.0. Okay, so don't worry, I'm not going to bring you through steam engines and railways, right? Because that's really something that pertains more to the industrial age and revolution back in the 19th century. But what I would say is that if we look at these 3 blocks, it tells you a few things, right? First and foremost, we've got quite a lot of new technology out there in the market. Those of you who read about it, right, watch some videos just now. You've got Sophie, the robot, right? You've got houses that unfold themselves, right? And of course,
self-driving cars.
Of course, yeah. That of course, right? But as I'll show you later on a technology curve and where those things sit, right? I think you'll be half convinced to say that even though those are impressive when you look at it today, right? It's still in that testing and concept proving age. As I'll give you more intel later. But what we're seeing here is that because of these advancements that's happening, there's a lot of research that's going into it, there's a lot of hype in it, right? So you might invest in these, but it's not very, very safe to put them all in one basket. So what I'm saying here is, if you go to a separate technology talk, and it's all about robotics, all about the future, all about virtual reality, AI, you probably don't want to put all your money in, right? Because it's still, after all, in a pretty young age at this point in time. So what that means is that with all these new technologies, it also means that traditional sectors will also benefit. Now, some people will say because there's all these new hype around new technology happening, we should forget about the old ones, meaning that we don't care about the chips, we don't care about the semiconductor, we don't care about the wafers anymore. But that's entirely untrue, because if you think about it, the only reason why every iPhone looks swankier and sexier than the last one is because you've got smaller and better chips to support the new ones, right? So
I mean, even the Chinese iPhones are getting better.
Absolutely. So every day the sector is improving. It's just so much so that because of the consumption behavior, everyone is so fixated about the gadget itself because of marketing and stuff. Because you don't market chips, right? You don't see advertisements on chips, right? You see them on iPhones, you see them on services. But essentially what that means is that there is still a lot of potential and a lot of upside, right, for these chip makers, even though you don't really see them because they're inside the device. So they will benefit as well. And the last bit, which I mentioned, which I started with, is that if valuations are reasonable, then whether it's hardware, software services, or whether it's a semiconductor, they are all worth investing in. So the message here is that we don't discriminate sectors, right? We don't say because this is old technology, we don't invest in them, because that's not true. That's not what we aim to do as well.
So you mentioned earlier that while we won't go through the entire history of the Industrial Revolution, what the audience should be interested in is that the Industrial Revolution actually happened several times, and we are now actually in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. And I think the next slide essentially shows you where we are, at least in the last 4 phases of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to go through Industrial Revolution 1 and 2 because that's really before all our time, and there's no point talking about the past because we've got battery-operated cars now, right? No point talking about steam engine cars. What I want to stress on, and what we can most of us here can relate to, apart from some of the younger ones, right, is Industrial Revolution 3 and of course 4, which we are today. Now, why do I say Industrial Revolution 3 is something that we can relate to? And you know, Mon and I had great fun chatting about this because you know, how much you know about Industrial Revolution 3 basically gives away your age, right? So how it works is this: Industrial Revolution 3 was all about computers, right, devices, and transfer of information. So that's when you have, you know, for those of you who have used floppy disks before, right? Each of them can, you know, put in 200 or so kilobytes.
360 kilobytes
exactly.
per floppy disk. Yeah.
For the younger guys around here, they won't understand what kilobyte is because it flies through, you know,
they're all on
Wi-Fi
yeah,
in less than a second these days, right? But you know, back in the days where we had floppy disks, I remember buying my first computer game, right? And they sold it in a box.
Boxes of like 10
or 20 pieces of floppy disks. And you're going to insert it one, they go, install it, then it come out, disk 2. And it's always a shame when you reach disk 9 and disk 10 tells you that you can't install this game because you have limited space in your computer. So it's painful. That age was painful. But it was all about devices, better computers, speedier machines. Right, that's free from it. Now, you might wonder, between 3 and 4, what's the big difference? Because after all, right, today, yes, we have iPhones, we have smartphones, but there's still about gadgets, and they're still making gadgets more efficient. Now, the magic behind Industrial Revolution 4.0 is that in this day and age, all these devices that you see there, they can talk to one another, right? They can talk, and what's more important is they are able to analyze consumption behavior, analyze your likes and dislikes, and more importantly, control you know, your daily life for you.
I'm interested in the talking to each other thing on the devices.
Okay, let's give you an example, right? So I'm wearing an iWatch right now, okay? But the funny thing is, I don't know much about my own activity because the iWatch is linked to my wife's phone.
Your iWatch is linked to your wife's phone?
By a stroke of luck.
Okay, so yes. no more iWatch for me, okay.
No, so the story is, she bought me an iWatch for Christmas, right? And then she says, I think you're putting on some weight, so go do some exercise, walk 10,000 steps a day, right?
10,000 steps.
Yeah, so she programs that into the watch, and obviously she texts me every other day because I fly around quite a lot, and she will say, you know, you're not moving today, right? You're only walking 3,000 steps.
We only did like 9,000 steps.
Get up and don't be lazy, right? She told me that. So not to encourage wives to buy iWatches.
So if you get an iWatch gift from your wife, you know the drill.
But the whole idea is because of that, she also knows you know, where I am, the kind of activities that I'm doing. Am I having a swim, right, while I'm waiting for a client event and stuff like that. So you know, it's a rather trivial example of what Internet of Things is, but the earlier example that I showed you, a day of my life, right? The thing about, you know, controlling your kettle, reading out news headlines right from the speaker just by saying, you know, read news headlines, right? And it comes on. It shows you that there's a lot of data transmission, a lot of data analytics that's going on behind your back, right? And you would appreciate it, right? Whether or not you know how it works. Yeah. So I'll digress from here and ask you guys a very quick question. How many of you watch YouTube videos? You do. Those of you who haven't put up your hands, I presume you've gone on to Netflix. Alright, so the whole idea is this, right? Have you ever, YouTube video surfing is a very addictive activity, right? Because it links you from video 1 to video 100, and before you know it, 3 hours has passed you by, right? Now, then you log out, you take a break, or you sleep, and you wake up next morning, and you continue to surf again. Now, have you ever wondered why is it that when you turn on YouTube again, it shows you recommended videos that you wouldn't mind watching, right? And it's not repetitive, it's often new videos that come on, right? So that's the power of big data and analytics and all these things going on behind. And the beauty of this is not just to show that it's smart, because the smartness leads to something. It leads to advertising industry booming, because well, now they're able to analyze how consumers behave, how consumers think, right? You start to feel the irritation as a consumer because every single video that you click on now has an ad. Right? Now that's how YouTube makes its money, of course. Right? So that's a chain of technology and its impact, and how it translates to consumers like yourselves and myself as well.
So, Industrial Revolution 4, very interesting, devices talking to each other. Are we at the beginning of the 4th Industrial Revolution? Are we at the tail end? Are we at the middle?
Yeah, on the next slide, you'll see a pretty interesting curve right there. And it's something that our analysts have come up with based on numerous meetings and conferences they've been to. And you would see that, as I mentioned just now, things like artificial intelligence, robotic, self-driving cars, and so on and so forth, they are at what we call the proof of concept stage. That's the reason why you don't see them all over the roads, okay? Because
they're like the prototypes.
Exactly.
Stage, yeah.
Exactly. Right, so they're testing for speed, they're testing for safety, they're testing for smartness, testing for weather, so on and so forth, right? But the key thing here is we are very sure that they are not the final product yet, okay? And with that, it means that while it is a very interesting place to sort of put your money in at some point, it's not prudent to just pin your hopes on one subsector in the value chain as well. If you look at the second stage where things become proven, right, then that's when you will see another wave of technology coming in. You will see robot makers, you will see robot part makers, right, and you will see, of course, a lot more software coming in to support all these hardware that's been produced on stage 1. So to answer your question, Juan, I think we're pretty much at first stage of 4.0. So
stage.
Yeah, exactly. We've gotten devices to talk. We've started analyzing all this data that's commingled behind the scene, right? And most importantly, it's benefiting various sectors. So consumerism is one, advertising is another, right? Connectivity, penetration from a digital perspective, right? These are all happening, and that's good for the industry at this stage. But we're likely to see a lot more as we move up the curve.
Can you give us examples of companies that are actually involved in this new and emerging technologies that the audience may want to invest in?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the next slide, actually I don't even need to sort of explain this too much, because you probably will recognize 70–80% at least of the logos here. We're not even seeing the words, right? You just have to look at it, you'll know things like Google and stuff like that. That represents the digital world, right? So Samsung represents the device, right? And with the device, you then go online. That's where the world opens up for you, right? So that's the middle part, it's the digital world. And then you've got the ongoing innovation part, which is really about innovating the kind of systems and platforms you have. So you see things like Rakuten, which is a big e-commerce platform, right? You will see TripAdvisor. You will see things like Airbnb, right? These are all there that creates a lot of innovation. And I stress the word innovation because if you think about a system like Airbnb, it's really quite magical because if you think about it this way, these guys have disrupted the hotel and rental industry without physically having to buy any property. Now that's amazing because if you think about hotel chains like Hyatt, Hilton, Shang, they spend billions of dollars, right, into infrastructure, building the hotel, ensuring that they've got a very decent occupancy rate. And these guys just come on the platform, and property listings come in, and it doesn't even really cost them much, right? And they've successfully disrupted the industry as a result. So innovation is key on this box. Let's look at a tech of the future. We spoke a bit about this, self-driving cars,
3D printing, virtual reality.
Exactly. Now this one has really got to do with, sorry for being old school again, but the likes of Intel or Mellanox, which really produces these chips and these chip technology as well. So I cannot stress this point enough. But while we like to be excited by these brands on 1 and 2, we cannot quite forget about 3, at least from an investor perspective. If you're a consumer, that's okay. You don't really have to care about what Intel does, right? But if you're an investor, you need to know what goes into the phone and why the company can make profits for its shareholders.
So we see a lot of technologies, new and emerging, a lot of companies coming up. My next question is, are clients already starting to embrace these technologies? Do we actually see usage and demand for these new technologies?
We think about it all the time. And if Fidelity trust me when I say the 14 or 15 technology analysts we have, who studies the sector, they're extremely prudent in ensuring that they're not just living in their own world. Because after a while, when we're so immersed in technology, you fly to Silicon Valley for conferences every couple of weeks, you start to feel a bit dislocated from people around you who are not as tech. So they are very, very serious in making sure that they don't behave like they're in an ivory tower where they're on the top of everything. So what we do in Fidelity is we also chart a lot of consumption behavior, because consumption behavior is the best way to understand whether this technology has been adopted, has been well received by end consumers like you and me. Okay? And the first chart there, you probably can't see it too well, but it's a breakdown of the types of vehicles or cars, right, through the years.
So you have their petrol, you have their battery operated, you have their hybrid probably.
Yeah, and mind you, so it's not a 20-year chart, right? It's just a 3-year chart. It's from 2015 to today, and you see such a big shift. Now the first few bars that you see, they're all dark blue. Now that's very obvious because they all run on petrol and diesel. Right? We didn't have anything else the last couple of years. Now then, as it moved to 2016 and 17, you start seeing the emergence of battery operated vehicles, right? That represents the light blue stuff that you see there, right? Now then, in more recent years, recent quarters, we start to see even more sophisticated hybrids out there, right? So the Teslas and things come to mind. And this is a very simple chart that tells you how consumption habits of a basic good like cars are changing the world, right? That's one. I really like the example on what
this one is Netflix.
Yeah. So I'll just do a poll so I can also tell my analysts what people in the Philippines think about Netflix. How many of you have a Netflix account? Right? Okay. Right. Okay. Now, how do I ask this? What inspired you to use Netflix? Is it because it's cool, gives you a lot of content? What was the key reason? Anyone? Movies on demand, right?
Movies on demand.
Hey, but we had that in cable TV too, right? Movies on demand. Okay, I get it. They suck, right? I agree.
That's a
and I'll tell you why. Because they control content so tightly, right? The age of cable, that you end up watching Lord of the Rings 10 times, right? And it's the same sequel, right? And you're paying for the service, right? And you don't pay to watch a movie 20 times a month, okay? So the beauty of Netflix is that it's innovated and changed itself, right, such that it loads up on content that everybody wants to see, right? And more importantly, because content is dead, right? We just have to accumulate it, right? But more importantly, they come up with a very, very high quality streaming service, right, that allows you to access these videos, these films, from anywhere as long as you have your device. Now that's beautiful because you don't need a cable box, you don't need a TV, right? You don't really need a computer, right? Anything to. So as a result, you will see that the subscription rate of Netflix has been nothing short of spectacular. Okay? Now some of you might wonder, Netflix as a stock has gone up by so many folds, right? Is it justified? I think this kind of tells you, at least from a subscription and adoption perspective, right, to go from something like 5 million subscribers to 150 million, right? I think that's quite a lot to shout about. Yeah. All right. Well, the rest of it, online retail, I think you know this very well. I think, for those of you who no longer buy, clothes or groceries from supermarkets, I think that's testament of how that's been adopted as well. Okay, and of course on the bottom left, we also have, of course, smartphone and connected devices. I don't think any one of us is using a Nokia today, right? Anyone on a Nokia phone? No? No, of course not, right?
There's 30 years that the smartphones now. Yeah. And the battery lasts 1 week. So
that's true. That's true.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of these new and emerging technologies. You mentioned about old technologies, so that's where my next question is on the next slide. Are there still opportunities in old technology? Can we actually invest in old technology?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said just now, the likes of chip providers, even the likes of software companies. Some people say, Microsoft is getting obsolete, and so on and so forth. But hey, all of us are still using Microsoft, in our daily lives, right? We just can't get away from it. So if you look at it, there's a lot of companies that is spending a lot more on software as a result of business expansion. And I'm talking about a lot of traditional industries. So I'm putting my money to sort of bet that some of you here are probably very successful business owners, right? You probably own some factories, you probably own some shops, right? And I just want you to take a pause and think about it. How have you made that business of yours more efficient in the last decade? Now I'm guessing there must have been some kind of software influence. Whether it's about managing supply chains, managing delivery systems to clients, I'm sure there must be, you cannot be operating out of a cash register today, right? So that's why a lot of companies have been putting in a lot of research costs, a lot of development costs into software. And that's where we're seeing the upside for traditional businesses as well. If I could also give you the next slide, and this is arguably the most important slide of today, because I want you to see the link between all these, what I call the technology value chain.
So there's like old and new technology in this entire
chain. So let's start from the very basic step one, okay? To have any form of device, right, I would say just now you need the chips, you need the semiconductors. But actually there's a step before that. You need technology and tools to make those chips, right? So that's your first step right here, okay? That's ARM, that's a chip designer company. They design the chip, right? And then this company, ASML from it's a Dutch company, right? It creates the tools used to make the chip. Okay? Now, then you actually need someone to make the chip. So that's TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor
manufacturer.
Exactly. Now, so that's these three things are what I think non-investors, right, or just pure consumers of technology will not really be quite bothered about, right? But I must stress, in the world of investing, you need to look at these as well, okay? Now, then comes the sexier part, right? Then comes the device manufacturer. That's where everybody gets excited. Like Galaxy, the latest iPhone, And that's where your LGs, your Samsungs, and so on and so forth.
Your Xiaomi's and
absolutely. Xiaomi, Huawei, and so on. The list goes on and on. Now, once you get your hands on that device, okay, obviously then you have to distribute it. So sorry, I missed that step, right? But once it distributes and the device ends up in your hands, okay, that's when your world as a consumer opens up, right? Do you watch videos on your phone? Do you buy stuff using your phone? Bank using your phone, of course, right? And that's where your search engine and your data analytics and your applications start to come in there, right? So there's a market there as well. Now, last but not least, as a consumer, right? I presume you will use your device to pay for something, right? You could buy something, you could pay for parking even, right? Just using some apps, and that's where your payment system comes in. Now, so if you look from left to right, you will see a very wholesome technology value chain. You can't exactly remove any one of them because it will cause a short circuit to this very well-functioning system that we have today. Okay? So once again, as consumers of technology, right, I want you guys to understand this, and more importantly, if you do invest in technology, right, you've got to be cognizant that this is where you can sometimes find the best value, even though you don't read much about them in papers, even though they're not the highest profile or the sexiest companies out there.
So far we've talked about what technology is, what are the sectors within the technology main sector that people can invest in. You also talked about how to invest in technology. We also talked about the new emerging technologies and how they interact and they still link with the old traditional technologies, and that produces us this value chain. So we've talked a lot about the technology aspect itself. Now, my next question in the next slide would be about the financial markets. So these companies weren't formed yesterday. So the valuations of these companies may have been quite high in the last few quarters. So I guess a lot of our members of the audience would like to know, given all of this potential on the technology sector, haven't the stock prices gone up to unreasonable levels that people cannot invest in them anymore?
So if you look at the next slide, you will see that within the technology sector, I mean, the reason why I started this talk by telling you about the granular subsectors of the industry is because I want you to understand that there is a lot of dispersion between each and every of these subsectors. So let's look at valuations from that perspective. So in short, if you look at internet, software, and services, right? Now, those are very expensive.
They're the most expensive industry.
Exactly. Then you go down to software, semiconductor, those are a lot less expensive from a valuation perspective. Now, more importantly, I wanted to tell you that we also did a price dispersion chart on the right, okay? And you will see the price or the price earnings multiple of the likes of Netflix, which is extremely expensive.
It's the most expensive.
Well, it reads 155 on the screen. Now, 155, for those of you who are not so familiar with valuations, right? 155 is the price to earnings ratio. Right? What that means is that when you buy a Netflix stock today, you're paying $155 to generate $1 of earnings. Okay? You can read it two ways, right? Number one, it's too much to pay for $1 of earnings.
155, yes.
You can also read it the other way, that you are so confident that you will get that $1 of earnings that you would pay $155 or even more for that. Okay?
Or you're betting it may not be $1, maybe more. Much more.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Okay? Now, that's where I would point you to all the other lines on the chart on the right, and that is companies and investments are all relative, right? If you see that Netflix is expensive, what is the expensive compared to, right? That's where you've got a second line, the light blue one, Amazon, right? Then you think about it, well, should I then buy Netflix or should I buy Amazon? Because Amazon, it's also doing pretty well, right?
It's cheaper, at least in the start, than Netflix.
It's got Alexa, it's got all these things that links up the Internet of Things that I spoke about, right? And then you start to think, hey, wait a minute, there's Apple down there, right, in that bronze line. It's quite attractive, right? It's launched its phone, there's so much going on in the company, and last but not least, it's a great company, right? And then you start to compare, and you start to see that there's a lot of dispersion in, not just these 4 stocks, but the entire industry as well. And therein, I'd like to emphasize another important point today to all of you here, and that is it is very easy to invest in a good company, right? Because there are many good companies out there. Right? Netflix, Amazon, these companies are great companies, even Facebook here. Now, the key thing I want to point out is good companies don't always make good investments, right? And the logic is very simple, because a company, how good a company is, has got nothing to do with you unless you own it, right? And more importantly, when you invest in a company, right, you want to make money. And you can only make
That's
money.
the number one goal.
Exactly. And if you want to make money, you cannot overpay for it, because the downside is going to be quite high, right? So effectively, what this means is that you've got to be price conscious when you buy into companies, and technology is a great example of this. So that's also why I would like to show you on this chart, different companies with different values of different valuations. And mind you, this chart makes it look like Facebook is worth nothing. That's not true, because if you look at the number, it's actually based at 85 times. Now, 85 times is still a lot to pay, right? So
5 times PE.
exactly. I didn't want to base it with 0 because it makes the chart look very strange. But essentially, the cheapest of that, a bunch of stocks there, which is Facebook, right, is still 85 times price to earnings. Okay. Now, which brings me to my next my next chart, really. And that is, if you look at where we are from a valuations perspective, so this is where we are closer to reality on the left. We see valuations of 85 times to 155 times on the last chart. Now that represents just a handful of companies. There are a lot more companies in the entire tech sector that actually brings down the overall average price to earnings to something like 17 times.
Which is much lower than what we saw in the dot-com bubble.
Absolutely, right? And good that you mentioned the tech bubble, because that's where this spike is, right? Now, I want to make a very clear distinction between the tech bubble of year 2000 and what we have today. Now, I'd like to first and foremost reassure you that we don't have a bubble state of the technology today, because back in the year, days of the year 2000s, right? We had more and more dot-com companies, right, creating websites, right, creating, strange ways of measuring success. For instance, how many clicks your website generates, right, and they put an enterprise value to that. Now, clearly, you could say whatever you want, but on the benefit of hindsight today, it tells me that all these websites and clicks translated to nothing, right? For an economy to take off and benefit, there needs to be the exchange of goods and services, okay? And that means that you can produce as many websites as you want, you can have as many clicks as you want, but as long as goods, currency, payment, and all these things don't change hands, it's not actually going to improve the status of the company or the economy, whichever you call it. And as a result, when valuations went that high, right, it was no surprise that we were due for a crash. Now today, it's very, very different, because like I showed you in that value chain just now, the 7-stage value chain, it leads to the consumption of services, it leads to the consumption of payment, it leads to goods changing hands, right? And that's what is the core difference between then and now, right? So sorry I digressed a little bit, but closer to the right, you will also see that technology has also a higher ROE. ROE stands for return on equity, right? So return on equity is 19%, as compared to general global equities, which have closer to an ROE of just 11%.
So about half of
Exactly. So you will see not just the fact that prices from an average sector perspective is decent, you will also see that from a return on equity perspective, it's attractive as well.
Okay, so far we've talked about what technology is. So far we've talked about what are the sectors in technology. We've talked about the new emerging technologies. We've talked about the old traditional technologies. We've talked about valuations, which is a very core component of investing. But investing is on two sides. You have the benefit and you have the risks. So my next question is, what are the risks of investing in the technology sector? And I'm sure there's not only one kind of risk that people face when they invest in technology.
Sure. Well, this is a strange question because even if you didn't ask it, my compliance team would have ensured that I put this on the slides because it's important that investors understand not just the attractiveness of the investment, but also the risk part. Now, there are some generic risks right here, but I'll just highlight two. And those are mis-execution risks and regulatory risks. Now, let me explain that further. Mis-execution is something that happens a lot in the technology industry. Okay? And a great example, once again, I love to use Netflix because it's been a company that's done so well because of well-taken decisions, right? And these are not always the right decisions, but they did make certain decisions that allowed them to cut losses and even move further ahead.
Hold on, before you continue. So, despite the success that everyone saw on Netflix, you mean at some point in time they actually made mistakes?
Of course. Based on the little I read, and for those of you down there who are a lot more tech savvy, right, correct me if I'm wrong, when Netflix first came to prominence, right, they were in the business of gathering a lot of content, a lot of material. And what they then intended to do was to boost subscriptions. And back then, they wanted to have a little device, a little cable box of that sort, right? It's portable, right? You bring it with you, right? It's almost like a VPN of sort, right? For computers or for linkage purposes. Now, then after a while, they scrapped the idea. And in fact, they scrapped the idea, as far as I read, within a span of just 12 weeks. And they were convinced that it wasn't going to work because the purpose and the objective, right, that determines the success of their business, they deemed it as the availability of watching these content anywhere as long as you have data, right? And the existence of that little box is not gonna help you achieve that because if you leave that box in the office or you leave that box in your bag and you didn't take it out, then you can't watch it. Right?
So the old model that they were thinking about is they thought the way to deliver the model is to have everyone buy their box to watch content.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not exactly sure of how it eventually turned out, but or what caused them to take this decision. But at the same time, they were also convinced that streaming was going to be the way of the future. But if you think about it, a couple of years back, when you did stream videos online, I think the common grouse or the common complaint that we have is that the quality is often bad, it sort of jams out every now and then, you refresh the screen, you get blurry figures, right, and stuff like that. That's how they paid someone, right? They issued a challenge to the who's who of Silicon Valley, and they said, whichever programmer can come up with a streaming technology that's better than the best out there will get $1 million from Netflix. So you can imagine all these guys in California started getting to work, and they got what they needed in a very short span of 6 weeks. And it works so well that it's the basis of Netflix today. So obviously those boxes that they had manufactured became obsolete. I don't think we've ever seen them, right? But because they never did come out. But that's this execution for you. So this day and age where we stand today, it's great if you're Netflix. It's bad if you are the box provider, right? So that's a sad fact of technology. So that's one example of this execution.
Okay. In the last few weeks, we've seen Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO and chairman of Facebook, appearing in front of the US Senate panel committee. And is regulatory risk becoming a bigger issue now, given how questions regarding privacy, technology, data are becoming more and more of an issue as we go forward.
That video was hilarious, by the way. Do you guys watch it? He was answering questions from the senator, and it was hilarious because clearly these are regulators who are trying to regulate something that you don't quite understand. Okay, and the thing about it is that regulatory risk will always be there because these are laws of countries, and data protection is a big thing these days. And with all these data analytics and systems and softwares out there that are trying to make meaningful combinations of consumption demand, we start to realize that governments and regulators are going to be a lot stricter than they used to be. Now, but I would caveat this and say that these guys come from the technology industry. Their specialty lies in innovation and invention, right? So I would put it past them to come with something that will very quickly circumvent regulations or comply with regulations if these things crop up. But yes, it is a risk nonetheless.
Okay, so we've now talked about what technology is, we've talked about the old and new technology, we've talked about market valuations, we've even talked about the risks of investing in technology. So I guess my last question for tonight, before we wrap up tonight's program, is what sets Fidelity apart from the other managers who invest in the technology sector? What makes Fidelity different? Why should investors consider Fidelity as a manager of technology strategies?
I cannot represent the entire investment universe of managers, right? It's not fair for me to do that. But what I would say that Fidelity stands out is actually from the video that you watched just now, where we spoke about research. Now, research is a very, very big thing in Fidelity. In fact, it's our DNA. We call that our DNA. And the reason for that is we believe that investing without doing research is effectively gambling, right? Because you need to know what you're investing in. You need to, more importantly, follow up with that investment you've chosen, so that you can time the market optimally to your advantage. That's what we do for our clients more than anything. I digress away from this chart, and I'd just like to share with you a very quick fact. And that is linked to today's presentation as well. Fidelity was one of the earliest investors into Alibaba. Right? And when I say investor, I don't mean investing in them after the IPO, after the IPO. It was an investment that took us back in time in 1999. And this was when one of our technology analysts was actually in China to do some research. And he met Jack Ma on a train, right? And back then, Jack Ma was already trying to talk about how he envisions e-commerce to be. Now, to be fair, we didn't invest in him, based on that train ride, right? But we started. The conversation got the analyst interested enough to start following that company, right? So he visited Jack Ma, once every year at least from then on. Then it became once every 6 months, once every quarter. And when we finally invested in the company, it was about 2004, right? As private equity investors. Obviously, what happened between 2004 to now, we all know the story, right? But the day where Alibaba was listed on the stock exchange marked the day where we made 100 times profit from our initial investment, right? So it multiplied by 100 times. Now, this story is not meant to boast about how much money we've made, but rather to emphasize the importance of research, because it didn't take us 5 minutes to find a company. It took us more than 5 years of quarter by quarter following to understand the company, to break it down, to really understand what it was. And that story translates into this chart over here, because you would see that a lot of tech investors tend to invest solely in the mega cap space. That's your Facebook or Amazon, right? But as I mentioned just now, much as these are great companies, you could lose money as an investor if you didn't buy them at the right price, right? And I should also say that as a result, Fidelity tends to, because of its research capability, find a lot of opportunities in the smaller cap space. So the mid caps, the small caps. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, right? Some of you might be thinking, hey, these are risky companies, they're unproven. Why do you buy them? Now I need to stress something that's very unique about the tech sector. The technology sector is not like banking. If you were investing in banks, you would never buy a small bank because their books are weak, their clientele is not strong. There's everything to dislike about a small bank, right? And there's no way a small bank can become a big bank overnight, unless obviously a bigger bank bought them, right? But what I'm trying to say here is that technology companies, they can grow extremely quickly, right? Whatever they were inventing, whatever we're talking about, right? If it comes to market fruition or they become an integral part of that value chain I showed you just now, then they tend to grow extremely fast. Think of where Netflix came from. Think of where Facebook came from, right? They rose to prominence in less than 2 years, right? So that's the speed of which a company at that 0.1 billion market cap could make it here, right?
But not all of these technology companies are success stories. You have companies which failed, got removed, added in the index. And I think that the next slide here shows you pretty much the entire story of these companies being added in an evolutionary way in the global equity industry.
Of course. So I call this the container truck diagram, right? What it shows you is there's this black line here. Above it are actually companies that have come into the S&P 500, right? And those under it are companies that have left, right? So they either become obsolete, they become smaller, and they fall out of the index. Now, what this tells you is, once again, reiterating the importance of research. Because by knowing what you buy, right, you can be pretty sure that at any point in time, you would have a view of which companies will rise in prominence, which companies will ride a good wave, and as a result, make it in. You will, of course, also conversely know that there are some sour lemons that you want to avoid, and those are the ones that went up. Okay? We don't always get it right. I need to caveat this, right? Nobody gets it right all the time. But research gives you a much higher chance of getting it right.
So pretty much, I think Fidelity's model, you're telling us, is being able with a higher degree of success, potentially, determine tomorrow's winners today. And I think your next slide here pretty much shows you a framework or a model on how these things are actually done in the firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at this what I call the technology model, what we're trying to do is to buy or to identify winners of tomorrow. Because the winners of today, you and I know, right? But the winners of tomorrow, to be honest, I don't know. My portfolio manager might know, my analyst might know, but that's why we have different roles, right? But the key thing here is that on these three bubbles, the blue, the orange, the beige one, tells you that we are very, very cognizant of these three bubbles below. Let me talk about, okay, I talked about valuation, so that's pretty clear, right? We've got to know what is optimal price for us to invest in. What I want to stress on is on company fundamentals. Now, fundamentals are very important because that's what our analysts and our portfolio managers study every day, right? And fundamentals, in very simple terms, just means what makes the balance sheet of the company work, right? It will tell you why, that company will continue being in existence and how can it continue to expand. That's from a numbers perspective. And as the common saying goes, numbers don't lie, right? So by having our analysts visit all these tech companies, right, on a quarterly basis, right, we are able to find out a lot more and clarify, right, what we understand of this balance sheet. That's how we get a feel of these company fundamentals.
Okay, so I guess some parting words to everyone in the audience on essentially what investing in technology means and why it's very important to consider opportunities if you are to include them in your portfolio. And I think your next slide here pretty much sums up everything that clients need to know.
Okay, I think this is too wordy, right, to end off, right? So what I'll do is I'll very quickly point out, how we started the presentation, and what I'd like to leave you with. So the first point is technology has become ingrained in our lives, like it or not, right? We use it, we are consumers of it, okay? And because it's so ingrained in our lives, we need to make a distinction between consuming technology and investing in technology, okay? Now that's where we start to think about technology from an investment perspective. So yes, I know when you buy a phone, you don't really care about the chip. But as investors, you need to know what kind of value that chip adds to the value chain. And therein lies the specialty of Fidelity. How do you know which company or which subsector to invest in that will give you the most value? Because robotics and artificial intelligence, virtual reality, those are nice and sexy topics to talk about, but they may not necessarily earn you that profit that you want in your investment. Conversely, right, an investment in semiconducting companies, right, might bring you the best profits. So, that gravitation between subsectors, okay, is what is going to make you a successful investor across the market cycle. So I would stress, number one, the importance of investing in technology and viewing technology as a new age global equity investment. And the second thing is obviously some of the parts, knowing where to invest at any point in time, and not avoiding something because it looks part of the whole technology sector. That's what I'd like to leave you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. PQ Lim. Please give him a round of applause for
Thank you very much.
A very good explanation of investing in technology. At this point, we'd like to see if there are questions from the audience on our presentation tonight or about investing in technology so far. But before we do that, I'd like to talk about briefly about the new fund that we launched 30 days ago, about a month ago. And we actually launched the first global technology fund in the Philippines. We launched it last month. We call it the ATRAM Global Technology Feeder Fund. It's managed by ATR Asset Management. It's denominated in Philippine peso, but it invests in global technology companies managed by, the strategy is managed by Fidelity International as well. So since launching it last month, it's a peso feeder fund. In the next slide, I think the return as of May 24 was about 6.67%. Of course, it's a combination between the appreciation of the technology stocks and the appreciation of the US dollar as well, given that the fund is denominated in pesos, right? So even after a month, almost 7% so far for this newly launched fund. So if you want to learn more about the fund, please do talk to your relationship manager. If you don't have the fund yet, some of you may have the fund already, but I guess this fund is available already for all of our clients. At this point, if there are questions from the audience, we can entertain them and while Mr. PQ Lim is here.
Hi everybody, today is Oksana's lucky day. She's getting the new Vivo V9. What's up, dude? So,
Hey, sir.
that is the new Vivo V9.
Yes, sir.
Which came out in April 2018.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us a little bit about the features of this wonderful phone? It looks very much like my iPhone 10.